The last thing I expected to see with my own eyes after 6 months of living in darkness was my daughter-in-law leaning close to my husband, whispering something that made him laugh in a way I hadn't heard in years. My heart stopped. My hands trembled as I sat silently in my armchair, pretending to be the same blind old woman they thought I still was. They didn't know. They didn't know that 2 weeks ago my vision had miraculously returned. They didn't know that every move they made, every word they spoke in hushed voices, I saw and heard clearly. I held my breath as I watched her gently brush something off his shoulder, her fingers lingering a little too long. My husband didn't move away. Instead, he smiled, his eyes soft in a way that made my stomach twist. My daughter-in-law, Emily, had always been sweet to me, or at least that's what I thought before I lost my sight. But now I saw everything. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump out of my chair and demand answers, but I didn't. Instead, I sat still, my face calm, my eyes hidden behind the dark glasses they believed I needed. They had no idea that I could see every secret, every betrayal. And what I saw next nearly made me drop my cane. Emily bent down, whispering something in my husband's ear. I couldn't hear her words, but I saw the smirk on her face. Then she did something that froze my blood. She slowly, almost playfully, slid her hand across his chest as she walked past him. My husband just stood there watching her leave the room, and I saw something in his eyes, a look that wasn't meant for a father-in-law to give. I felt my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I gripped the armrest of my chair, trying to calm the storm inside me. Was this happening? Was I imagining it? My name is Margaret Collins. I am an 83-year-old retired schoolteacher from a small town in Vermont. For the past 6 months, I've been battling the cruel reality of losing my sight. Doctors told me it might be permanent. The world became a blur, and I became a burden, or so they thought. I depended on everyone, especially my husband, Robert, and my son's wife, Emily. They fed me, dressed me, guided me. They thought I was weak, but what they didn't know was that I was slowly recovering. My vision returned, first as blurry shapes, then shadows, and finally as clear as daylight. But I kept it a secret. Why? Because I wanted to see who they truly were when they thought I couldn't see. And what I discovered tore my heart apart. Over the past 2 weeks, I noticed Emily spending more and more time with Robert. She laughed louder at his jokes, touched his arm more than necessary, and gave him long looks when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Robert, my husband of 60 years, didn't push her away. Sometimes he even looked at her with an expression I couldn't bear to describe. I didn't want to believe it, not at first. The house felt colder with every passing day. I pretended to stumble, to fumble with my cane, to miss their little exchanges. At night, when they thought I was asleep, I heard the soft murmur of voices downstairs, the clink of glasses, and sometimes the sound of laughter, hers and his. My son David worked late most nights, and when he was gone they grew bolder. Tonight was no different. As David left for his shift at the hospital, I heard Emily humming in the kitchen. Robert was sitting in his recliner, pretending to read. But I saw it, the way his eyes followed her every move. When she brought him a drink, her fingers brushed his hand just a little too long. My stomach knotted. I needed proof. I needed to know for sure. So I stayed quiet. I watched. I waited. And then something happened that changed everything. Emily walked toward me, smiling that sweet smile she always wore. "Margaret, do you need anything?" she asked, her voice soft and kind, the way she always sounded around me. I shook my head, playing the part of the helpless old woman. She patted my hand and walked past me, but as she passed, she whispered something so low I almost didn't catch it. "Poor thing, if only you knew." My breath caught in my throat. She knew I was blind, or thought I was, and she was mocking me. Later that evening, I pretended to doze off in the living room while they sat across from each other, whispering and laughing softly. I cracked my eyes open just enough to see what was happening, and that's when Emily stood, walked over to Robert, and did something that made my entire world collapse. She leaned down and kissed him. Not a peck on the cheek, not a friendly gesture. It was slow, it was intimate, and Robert didn't pull away. My cane slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. They both froze. Emily straightened quickly, her face pale. Robert's eyes widened as he looked at me, sitting there, my head tilted slightly toward them. But I didn't speak. I just sat there, breathing hard, staring at them through my dark glasses. They thought I couldn't see. They thought I didn't know. They thought they were safe. I forced a weak smile and said, "Good night," before slowly standing and walking upstairs. My legs felt like they would give out at any moment, but I made it to my room, closed the door and leaned against it, tears streaming down my face. I had to be sure. I had to know the truth. And what I discovered the next day, when I decided to follow them, was something that shocked not just me, but would soon shock everyone. The next morning, the house felt unusually quiet. Emily and Robert spoke in hushed tones in the kitchen, but I could hear them clearly from the hallway. I moved slowly, keeping my cane in front of me, tapping it against the floor as if I were still blind. Emily's voice floated to my ears, soft and secretive. "She doesn't suspect a thing," she said, and my heart nearly stopped. Robert's reply was low, almost a whisper. "Just be careful. David can't find out." David, my son, the man Emily married, the man who trusted his wife and his father completely. They were both betraying him. Under my roof. I gripped the handle of my cane tighter, forcing my face to remain neutral. Inside, I was screaming. My hands trembled, but I pushed myself to stay calm. This was not the time to reveal my secret. Not yet. I needed to know everything. I needed to see just how far this had gone. After breakfast, I told Emily I wanted to sit outside for some fresh air. She smiled sweetly, as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. "Of course, Margaret," she said, helping me to the porch swing. As soon as she walked back inside, I slipped off my dark glasses, my eyes scanning the backyard. Through the window, I saw her lean close to Robert again, laughing at something he said. My stomach churned. When they disappeared into the living room, I stood quietly, walking around the side of the house. I peeked through the window, and what I saw made my knees weak. They were sitting on the couch, closer than they should have been, her hand resting on his leg. I gasped quietly, stepping back before they could notice me. I had seen enough for the moment. I returned to my chair on the porch, put my glasses back on, and waited. The sun warmed my skin, but inside I felt cold, betrayed, and hollow. Memories of my marriage flooded my mind. Robert and I had been through everything together. Raising David, struggling through hard times, celebrating milestones. We had been partners, best friends, lovers. Now, watching him with Emily felt like a knife twisting in my chest. That night I pretended to sleep again. I heard footsteps outside my room, hushed voices, and the creak of the floorboards downstairs. They thought I was oblivious, that I couldn't see or hear. But I saw shadows moving under my door, heard muffled laughter, and the clinking of wine glasses. I needed a plan. I couldn't just sit and cry in silence. I had to know what they were hiding beyond the flirting and whispers. The next day, I followed them. They didn't notice me, of course. I moved slowly, staying behind corners, peeking through doors. Emily left the house in the afternoon, and Robert said he was going to run errands. I grabbed my coat, slipped out quietly, and followed at a safe distance. My heart pounded with every step. Emily drove to a cafe in town. Robert's car was already parked outside. They sat at a corner table, their hands touching across the table, their heads close together. My stomach turned as I watched them laugh, sharing secrets over coffee like two teenagers in love. But then something unexpected happened. Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. She slid it across the table to Robert. He opened it, and his expression changed. His face pale, his eyes wide. I couldn't see what was inside, but whatever it was, it shocked him. Emily leaned in, whispering something that made him grip her hand tightly. I felt dizzy. I stepped back, hiding behind a wall, my breath shallow. What was in that envelope? Robert stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. Emily stood too, touching his arm to calm him. They left the cafe together, walking quickly to his car. I ducked behind a tree, watching them drive off. I didn't know where they were going, but I knew I had to find out. That night, the tension in the house was thick. Robert barely spoke to me, and Emily avoided my gaze. I stayed quiet, pretending to be the same helpless old woman they thought I was. Inside, I burned with questions and anger. And then, just before midnight, I heard them talking in the kitchen. I crept down the hallway, staying in the shadows, listening. Emily's voice trembled. "We can't hide this forever." Robert's reply was firm. "We have to. If Margaret finds out, everything will fall apart." My blood ran cold. What were they hiding from me? I stepped back, my heart pounding, almost tripping over my cane. I hurried to my room, my hands shaking. I closed the door softly, leaning against it as tears filled my eyes. Whatever they were hiding, it wasn't just an affair. It was bigger, something dangerous. And the next day, when I overheard Emily's phone call, the one she thought I couldn't hear, I realized just how big it was. Because she said words that made my heart stop completely. "Make sure no one finds out what we did. If she suspects anything, we'll have to do it sooner than planned." I froze, clutching my chest. What were they planning to do to me? I didn't sleep at all that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind outside made my heart jump. Their voices echoed in my head, Emily saying, "We'll have to do it sooner than planned." What did that mean? Were they talking about me? By dawn, I had made up my mind. I would not sit around waiting to be a victim. If they thought I was weak, they were in for a surprise. But first, I had to keep my secret safe. They couldn't know I could see. At breakfast, I kept my face calm, my glasses on, my hands trembling slightly like an old woman's should. Emily served me eggs, her smile too bright, too sweet. Robert sat across from me, his eyes avoiding mine. "You're quiet today, Margaret," Emily said, pretending to care. I gave her a faint smile. "Just tired, dear. Thank you for helping me." My voice cracked just enough to keep up the act. Robert cleared his throat. "David's coming home early today," he said. "We'll have dinner together." The mention of my son's name gave me a flicker of strength. David was my only ally, even if he didn't know it. But he was blind to what was happening right under his nose. I needed proof before I told him anything. Later, when Emily left for what she called grocery shopping, I slipped quietly down the hallway to their room. My hands shook as I opened the drawer by Robert's nightstand. Inside, I found a folded piece of paper. I opened it slowly, my heart pounding. It was a bank statement. My eyes scanned the numbers, large withdrawals, thousands of dollars missing from our savings. My mouth went dry. Where had that money gone? Before I could look further, I heard footsteps. I quickly folded the paper and shoved it back, closing the drawer just as Robert walked in. "What are you doing in here?" he asked sharply. I froze, clutching my cane. "Oh, I must have taken the wrong turn." "These old eyes," I said, forcing a weak laugh. He stared at me for a long moment, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Then he softened. "Be careful, Margaret." I nodded and shuffled out, my heart beating like a drum. He almost caught me. That evening, David came home early, just like Robert said. The atmosphere at dinner was tense. Emily laughed a little too loudly at Robert's jokes. Robert kept glancing at me, as if trying to read my thoughts. David, tired from work, barely noticed anything. Halfway through the meal, Emily's phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly, her face tightening before she excused herself to take the call. I listened closely as she whispered in the hallway. "Yes, everything's ready. He signed the papers. We just need her out of the way," she said. My blood ran cold. Papers? Out of the way? I gripped my fork so tightly my hand hurt. She came back a few minutes later, her smile back in place, but I saw the flicker of something dark in her eyes. After dinner, I pretended to be tired and went upstairs early. I sat in the dark, listening. Around midnight, I heard them again, Emily and Robert, talking in the kitchen. "We can't wait much longer," Emily said. "I know," Robert replied, his voice low, "but she trusts me. That's our advantage." My hands shook so badly I had to cover my mouth to keep from crying out. They were planning something against me. And soon. The next day, I followed Emily again. This time, she didn't go to the cafe. She drove to a law office. I watched from across the street as she met with a man in a suit. They talked for almost an hour. When she came out, she was smiling. I waited until she drove off before I approached the office. I couldn't go inside without raising suspicion, but I saw the sign on the door. Bennett Clark, Family and Estate Law. Estate. My estate. That night, I searched through the drawers again while they were downstairs. This time, I found it. A copy of a new will. My name was still on it, but with conditions I didn't understand. There were signatures I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I put it back. My head spun. They weren't just having an affair, they were plotting to take everything from me, and maybe even worse. I returned to my room, sitting on the edge of my bed, clutching my chest. The walls felt like they were closing in. I needed to act fast. But how? And then, as if fate was testing me, I heard a noise outside my window. I pulled back the curtain slightly and froze. Emily was in the garden, talking on the phone. Her voice carried in the still night. "Yes, after the weekend. She'll be gone by then. Trust me. Gone." She was talking about me. The next morning I made my decision. I would gather every piece of proof I could, and when the time was right I would expose them. They thought I was blind, weak, and helpless. But I was none of those things anymore. And that evening, when David mentioned he was working late again, Emily and Robert exchanged a glance that made my blood run cold. Whatever they were planning, they intended to do it soon. I clutched my cane, whispering to myself, "Not if I can help it." But what I saw them doing later that night, when they thought I was asleep, shattered my heart all over again. Because this time, they weren't just whispering. They were both holding something that looked like a syringe. The sight of that syringe burned into my mind all night. I lay in bed stiff as a board, my heart hammering in my chest. They thought I couldn't see, thought I couldn't understand what they were planning, but I understood enough. Something terrible was about to happen to me. My first instinct was to run. But where could I go at midnight without raising suspicion? I had to keep pretending, just for a little longer. I needed to survive until I had proof, until I could confront them at the right time. The next morning, I acted normal. Or at least, as normal as they expected from a blind 83-year-old grandma. I shuffled around the kitchen, fumbling with the coffee pot, while Emily stood behind me, watching too closely. "Careful, Margaret," she said sweetly. "Let me help you." I forced a smile. "Thank you, dear. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. Robert walked in, his face unreadable. He kissed me on the forehead, something he hadn't done in months, maybe years. That small gesture once would have warmed my heart, but now it chilled me to the bone. It felt fake. Throughout the day, I watched them, every look they exchanged, every whisper behind closed doors. The syringe was nowhere to be seen, but I knew they still had it. Later, I overheard Emily making another call. She thought I was outside on the porch, but I stood quietly near the hall. "Yes, everything's ready. She won't feel a thing," Emily whispered. "By the time David gets home, it will be done." My breath caught in my throat. Won't feel a thing? My knees nearly gave out. I stumbled back to the porch, my cane clattering as I sat down heavily. I needed to think. Fast. That night, while they were in the living room, I slipped into the kitchen. I opened drawers, checked behind jars, under the sink, anywhere they could have hidden that syringe. Finally, I found it in a small box tucked behind cleaning supplies. My hands shook as I held it up to the light. The liquid inside was clear, unmarked. I had no idea what it was, but I knew it wasn't good. I placed it back exactly where I found it and returned to my room, my mind racing. I had to tell David. But without proof, would he believe me? They could twist it, make me look crazy. The next evening, the plan moved faster than I expected. David called to say he'd be working late again. The moment Robert hung up the phone, he looked at Emily, and she nodded. My stomach turned. After dinner, I pretended to be exhausted. I told them I was going to bed early. I could feel their eyes on me as I slowly climbed the stairs. Once in my room, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, fully dressed, listening. Hours passed, and then I heard it, the soft creak of the stairs, footsteps approaching my door. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. The doorknob turned slowly. Through the crack, I saw Emily first, holding that same small box. Robert stood behind her, his face pale but determined. "Is she asleep?" she whispered. "Yes," Robert muttered. "Just do it quickly." I forced myself to keep breathing evenly, pretending to sleep. My eyes stayed closed, but my ears were wide open. Emily crept closer. I could hear the faint click of the syringe being prepared. My hands gripped the edge of the blanket so tightly they hurt. Just as she leaned over me, about to inject whatever poison she had prepared, the front door slammed. David's voice boomed from downstairs. "Mum, you awake?" Emily froze. Robert stiffened behind her. I seized the moment. I let out a small, convincing groan and rolled slightly, as if disturbed in my sleep. Emily quickly shoved the syringe back into her pocket and stepped away. "Margaret's asleep," Robert called down. His voice trembled. David's footsteps came up the stairs. I felt tears of relief burn my eyes. When he peeked into my room, I opened my eyes slightly. "David?" I whispered weakly. He smiled. "Sorry to wake you, Mum. Just wanted to say good night." Emily forced a smile behind him. "Good night, Margaret." Her tone was sugary sweet, but I saw the panic in her eyes. That night they didn't try again, but I knew they would. The next morning, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I needed a plan and an ally. So, while Emily was out, I called my old friend Martha from the church. She was the only person I trusted. I told her everything, well, almost everything. I left out the part about my vision returning. For now. Martha promised to come by the next day. That evening, as the sun set, I sat quietly by the window, pretending to be lost in thought. But I saw everything. Emily and Robert were in the garden speaking in low voices. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. "Tomorrow," Emily said. "It has to be tomorrow. No more delays." Robert nodded. "Tomorrow." My hands trembled as I closed the curtain. Tomorrow something was going to happen. But what they didn't know was that tomorrow I would be ready for them. And when Martha showed up early, bright and sharp, she said words that sent a jolt of hope through me. "I brought a camera, Margaret. Let's catch them in the act." The next morning, the air in the house felt heavy, like a storm was about to break. Emily hummed softly while making breakfast, pretending everything was normal. Robert sat silently at the table, staring into his coffee. I sat across from them, keeping my dark glasses on, hiding the fact that I was watching every move they made. Inside, my heart was racing. Today is the day they planned to do it. I forced myself to eat slowly, acting fragile, my hands trembling just enough to keep up the illusion. When Emily leaned over to wipe a non-existent crumb off my shirt, her fingers lingered on my shoulder. She smiled sweetly, but her eyes were cold. After breakfast, she suggested I take a nap. I nodded, hiding my fear. "That's a good idea, dear," I said softly, and made my way to my room. But instead of sleeping, I waited. Martha had promised to come by with her camera, and she was never one to break a promise. Just as the clock struck 10, I heard a soft knock at the back door. I opened it quietly, letting her in without a sound. Martha, a spry woman in her 70s with sharp blue eyes, slipped inside with a small bag. "Are you ready for this?" she whispered. I nodded, my voice trembling. "They plan to do it today." She hugged me tightly. "Don't worry. We'll catch them red-handed." We worked quickly. Martha placed a small camera behind a vase in the living room and another in my bedroom hidden in the corner. "These record directly to my phone," she said. "We'll have proof." I felt a surge of hope. Finally, I wasn't alone. When Emily returned from the store later that morning, she didn't notice anything different. She smiled at me, but I could see her glancing at Robert nervously. They were planning something, and the clock was ticking. Around noon, David called to say he'd be working a double shift and wouldn't be home until late. Emily's face lit up at the news, and Robert gave her a subtle nod. My stomach churned. After lunch, I pretended to be tired and went upstairs, as expected. Martha stayed hidden in the guest room, ready to record. I lay on my bed, my heart pounding, staring at the ceiling. Hours crawled by. Finally, just as the sun began to set, I heard them coming up the stairs. My hand tightened on the blanket. I kept my breathing slow, pretending to sleep. The door opened quietly. I cracked my eyes open just enough to see Emily and Robert step inside. Emily was holding the syringe again, her hands steady, her expression cold. Robert stood behind her, looking pale but determined. "Are you sure this will work?" he whispered. "She'll just go peacefully in her sleep," Emily replied. "By the time anyone finds out, it'll be too late." I felt bile rise in my throat. Emily leaned over me, pulling the syringe cap off with a soft pop. My heart raced so fast I thought it might give me away. Just as she brought it close to my arm, Martha burst out of the guest room, phone in hand, camera recording. "Gotcha!" Martha shouted. "It's all on tape!" Emily froze, the syringe shaking in her hand. Robert stepped back, his face draining of colour. What are you doing here?" Emily stammered. Martha held up her phone. "Trying to kill Margaret, huh? I've got everything recorded. The police will love this." Emily's eyes went wide with panic. She dropped the syringe to the floor and backed away. Robert ran a hand through his hair, muttering, "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," I said, sitting up and ripping off my glasses. My voice was cold, steady. "And by the way, I can see." Their jaws dropped. "You've been pretending?" Robert said in shock. "Yes," I hissed, "and I saw everything. Every kiss, every whisper, every plan to get rid of me." Emily's face twisted with rage. "You old witch!" Before she could finish, Martha dialed 911. "It's over. You're done." Emily lunged for the phone, but Martha stepped back. Robert grabbed Emily's arm, trying to calm her down, but she yanked free. "You don't understand," Emily screamed. "You don't know why we did it." The sirens in the distance answered her. Moments later, the police stormed in. Emily tried to hide the syringe, but Martha handed them the recording. Robert stood frozen, defeated, as the officers handcuffed them both. As they were led out of the house, Emily turned to me, her eyes blazing with hatred. "This isn't over, Margaret. You'll regret this." I stood tall, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "No, Emily, you will." The door slammed behind them, leaving the house eerily quiet. Martha hugged me tightly. "You're safe now." But deep down I knew this wasn't the end. There was something Emily had been hiding, something even bigger than what we caught today. And when I checked the footage later that night, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Because in the video just before the police arrived, Emily slipped a small key into Robert's hand and whispered something that sent chills through me. "Get it before she finds out." I didn't sleep that night. The image of Emily's hand slipping that tiny key to Robert haunted me. Even in the darkness of my room, I could see it clearly, gleaming in his palm before the police dragged them away. What was it for? What were they still hiding? By morning, the house was too quiet. Robert was gone. He had managed to slip away during the chaos of the arrest. The police had taken Emily, but Robert must have convinced them he was innocent or uninvolved. That fact terrified me even more. Martha stayed by my side, refusing to leave me alone. She brewed strong coffee and handed me a cup. "We need to figure out what that key opens," she said. "I know," I whispered, my fingers trembling as I held the cup. "Whatever it is, it's important." Emily risked everything to give it to him. We searched the house top to bottom. Drawers, cabinets, closets, nothing. No locked boxes, no hidden safes. It was as if Robert had already taken whatever that key unlocked. Later that day, I called the detective handling the case. I told him about the key and my suspicions. He promised to look into it, but I could tell he didn't think much of my theory. To them, Emily was already in custody, and the case was nearly closed. But I knew better. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I received a call from an unknown number. My hands shook as I answered. "Margaret," Robert's voice said, low and rough. My throat tightened. "Where are you?" "You shouldn't have done this," he said. "You've ruined everything." "You were trying to kill me," I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. "You don't understand," he said. "It's not what you think. This is bigger than us. You've put yourself in danger by snooping." "Danger from what?" I demanded. There was a long pause, and then he said something that sent chills down my spine. "Don't look for me, Margaret. Don't look for the key. If you do, you'll regret it." The line went dead. I stood frozen, the phone slipping slightly in my grip. Martha touched my arm. "What did he say?" "He warned me," I whispered. "But that only makes me want to find out more." The next day, while the police believed everything was under control, I decided to dig deeper myself. I called an old friend of David's who worked in real estate, asking if Robert had any secret properties. Within hours, the friend called back. "Margaret," he said cautiously, "Robert owns a small cabin in the woods about an hour from here. It's not listed under his main records, but it's there. A hidden property." My stomach flipped. That had to be where the key belonged. Without telling anyone, I convinced Martha to drive me there. The cabin was hidden deep in the forest, surrounded by tall pines that blocked the sun. It looked abandoned, the windows dark, the door dusty. I clutched my cane, my heart pounding. "This is it." We stepped inside. The cabin smelled of damp wood and secrets. Dust coated the furniture, but there were fresh footprints on the floor. Robert's footprints. We searched every corner until we found it, a locked chest under the bed. The keyhole was small, matching the size of the key Emily had slipped to Robert. The chest was locked, and the key was missing. My heart sank. But Martha, ever resourceful, found a hairpin and worked at the lock until it clicked open. Inside were stacks of cash, fake IDs, and, most chilling of all, documents with my name on them. My will, my medical records. Papers that said I had died weeks ago, signed with a forged signature. My breath caught. They had planned to declare me dead, take everything and disappear. As I flipped through the papers, a small envelope fell out. I opened it with shaking hands and found a photo of Emily, but not just Emily. She was standing with a man I didn't recognize, holding a baby. On the back, in Robert's handwriting, were the words, "Don't let her know the truth." Before I could process what I was seeing, the floor creaked behind us. Martha and I turned slowly. Robert stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes dark with something I had never seen before. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. My blood ran cold. "Robert," I said, my voice shaking, "what is this? Who is that child?" He stepped closer, his expression twisted. "You were never supposed to know. Now you've left me no choice." Martha grabbed her phone to call the police, but Robert lunged forward, knocking it from her hand. I stumbled back, clutching the chest. My heart pounded as I stared at the man I once loved, now a stranger. "Robert, don't do this," I pleaded. His voice was low, almost a growl. "You think you're safe because you caught Emily. You don't know what you've started." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from outside. The police had arrived. Martha had managed to hit the emergency call button before he grabbed her phone. Robert froze, his face a mask of fury and despair. He bolted out the back door, disappearing into the woods as officers swarmed the cabin. I clutched the papers to my chest, tears streaming down my face. I had proof of everything now, but the mystery of the child and the man in the photo still gnawed at me. As the police secured the cabin, I whispered to myself, "This isn't over, not by a long shot." And later that night, when I finally had a moment to breathe, I received a message on my phone from an unknown number. It was a photo of Robert holding that same key with a single line of text. "If you love your son, stop digging." I stared at the message until the screen went dark in my trembling hand. "If you love your son, stop digging." It wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. Robert wasn't only protecting himself, he was protecting something else, or someone. The next morning, I didn't tell Martha about the message. I didn't want to scare her further, and I needed to think clearly. While the police believed Robert was on the run, I knew he was still watching us. I felt his presence in every shadow, every creak of the house. David came home early that day, worried and exhausted. "Mum, what's going on? The police told me Dad disappeared and Emily's in jail screaming about conspiracies." His eyes searched mine for answers. I wanted to tell him everything. The affair, the attempted murder, the secret cabin, the mysterious child. But how could I, without breaking his heart? Instead, I hugged him tightly. "David, just stay close to me. Don't trust anyone right now." He frowned. "Not even Dad." I swallowed hard. Especially not him. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the photo of Emily with the unknown man and baby. Who was that child? And why was Robert desperate to keep it secret? At dawn, I made a decision. I called Martha and asked her to meet me at the police station. Together, we handed over the documents and photos we had found in the cabin. The detective looked stunned. "This changes everything," he said. "Robert isn't just a suspect in your attempted murder. He's involved in something bigger. Fraud, maybe human trafficking. We'll issue a nationwide alert." As we left the station, Martha whispered, "You did the right thing." But deep inside, I felt dread. Robert was clever. He wouldn't be caught easily. That afternoon, I asked David to drive me to the cabin again. I told him I had left something behind. When we got there, the police tape fluttered in the wind, but no officers were around. The place was eerily silent. Inside, the chest was gone. Everything, cash, papers, photo, gone. My stomach dropped. "Mum, what are you looking for?" David asked, confusion in his eyes. I forced a shaky smile. "Nothing, dear. I just wanted to see it one more time." As we left, a black SUV appeared at the edge of the woods. The windows were tinted, the engine running. It didn't move, just sat there like a predator watching its prey. David noticed. "Who's that?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Keep driving." We left quickly, but the SUV followed us all the way back to town before disappearing into a side street. That night, I locked every door and window. My heart raced with every sound. Martha stayed over, determined not to leave me alone. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You gave the police what they wanted. Now we'll take what we want." Before I could react, a loud crash echoed from the back of the house. Martha screamed. I grabbed my cane, my hands shaking. The back door was open. Footsteps creaked in the hallway. A shadow moved past the kitchen. Then another. We backed into the living room as the figure stepped into view. It wasn't Robert. It was a man I didn't recognize. tall, muscular, his face hidden under a cap. He didn't say a word, just advanced slowly. "Stay back," I shouted, gripping my cane like a weapon. Suddenly, the front door burst open. David, who had been returning from his night shift, stormed in. "Mum!" The man bolted toward the back, vanishing into the darkness before David could grab him. The police arrived minutes later, but it was too late. Whoever that man was, he had left behind something chilling, a small note on the kitchen table. In bold letters it read, "Find the child, and you die." Martha gasped, clutching my arm. David looked at me, confused and terrified. "Mum, what child?" he asked. I couldn't answer. Tears blurred my vision. The secret was unraveling faster than I could handle. The police promised to keep watch on the house, but I knew it wasn't enough. Robert was still out there. The child, whoever they were, was the key to everything. The next day I packed a small bag. Martha tried to stop me, but I told her, if I don't find the truth, none of us are safe. So with David reluctantly driving me, we headed out to follow the only lead we had. A name scrawled on the back of the photo I had hidden before the chest was stolen. It said, Lily. We reached a small town 2 hours away, where the name had surfaced in old adoption records. As we pulled into the main street, I felt someone watching us. And when I stepped out of the car, a young girl, no older than 10, stood at the edge of the road, staring straight at me with eyes that looked hauntingly familiar. Before I could call out to her, a black SUV screeched around the corner and sped straight toward her. Time slowed as the black SUV charged toward the little girl. My heart lurched. Without thinking, I screamed, "David, get her!" David bolted forward, faster than I had ever seen him move. The girl stood frozen, her small hands clutching a worn backpack. Just as the SUV neared, David grabbed her and rolled them both onto the sidewalk. The vehicle swerved and sped off, disappearing down the road before anyone could catch the license plate. The child clung to David, trembling. I rushed over, my cane tapping furiously against the pavement. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She nodded slowly, her eyes wide and scared. "They want to take me," she whispered. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a random child, this was Lily, the name on the photo. I looked at her closely and my breath caught. Her blonde hair shone in the sunlight, and her eyes, those eyes, were the same piercing blue as Robert's. David noticed it too. "Mum," he said softly, she looks like Dad." Before I could respond, the girl spoke again. "Are you Margaret? My mummy said if I ever saw you, I should tell you the truth." I felt my knees weaken. "Yes, I'm Margaret." She looked down, tears brimming in her eyes. "My mummy was Emily's sister. She told me Robert is my father." The words slammed into me like a freight train. Robert had a child with Emily's sister, and they'd kept her hidden? David stepped back, shaking his head in disbelief. "This is insane," Lily continued, her voice trembling. "Mommy died in a car accident. Before she died, she said Robert would come for me, and that I had to stay away from him because he was dangerous." I hugged her tightly, my heart breaking for this child. "You're safe now, Lily, I promise." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't true. The black SUV proved Robert was still hunting her, and now he would come for all of us. We took Lily to the nearest police station, explaining everything. The officers promised to put her under protection, but my gut told me it wouldn't be enough. Robert had influence, money, and connections. That night we stayed in a motel under police supervision. Lily clung to my hand, refusing to let go. I stayed awake, listening to every sound, every movement outside. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. A new message. "You found her. Now hand her over, or you'll lose David." My heart stopped. I looked at David, who was asleep in the chair, his chest rising and falling peacefully. The threat was clear. I typed back with trembling fingers. "Why are you doing this? She's just a child." The reply came instantly. "She's the key. You wouldn't understand. I turned off my phone, fear clawing at me. What could a 10-year-old child hold that was so important, so dangerous that Robert would kill for it? The next morning, as we prepared to leave under police escort, Lily slipped a small pendant from her backpack and handed it to me. My mummy said this holds the secret. It was a delicate locket, old and scratched. Inside was a tiny chip, barely visible. "What's this, Lily?" I asked softly. She whispered, "Mummy said it has proof about Robert and Emily, proof that will destroy them." Before I could examine it further, shots rang out outside the motel. Glass shattered, officers shouted. The black SUV had found us. David pulled me and Lily to the floor, covering us as chaos erupted. Officers returned fire, but the attackers were relentless. Through the broken window, I saw Robert standing near the SUV shouting something I couldn't hear. His eyes locked on mine, cold and furious. He pointed directly at me and yelled, "Give me the child!" I held Lily tighter. "Over my dead body!" I screamed back. David dragged us toward the back exit as officers engaged the shooters. We ran through the alley, the sound of gunfire echoing behind us. The SUV roared to life, chasing us down the narrow street. We jumped into a police cruiser, the driver slamming on the gas. Sirens wailed as we sped away, the SUV close behind. Lily sobbed, clutching the locket. "He'll never stop," she cried. I wrapped my arms around her. "Then we'll stop him first." The chase ended when reinforcements arrived, forcing the SUV to retreat. But Robert escaped again. Back at the station, the detective examined the chip. His face went pale as he connected it to a laptop. This is evidence of an entire network," he said. "Illegal accounts, offshore money, names of people involved. This isn't just about you, this is a criminal empire." Everything clicked into place. Robert and Emily weren't just trying to kill me to take my estate, they were covering up something massive. And now, with Lily in our care and the chip as proof, we were their biggest targets. The police decided to move us to a safe house until they could arrest Robert. But as we settled in that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was already one step ahead. Just as I closed my eyes, my phone buzzed one last time. The message read, "You think you're safe? Look behind you." I spun around, only to see the silhouette of a man standing in the doorway of our safe house, holding a gun. The shadowed figure stepped into the room, the gun glinting under the faint light. I froze, clutching Lily to my chest while David instinctively moved in front of us. "Robert," I whispered, my voice trembling with both fear and rage. He smirked, his eyes as cold as steel. "You never should have crossed me, Margaret. You should have stayed blind." Behind him, I noticed the two officers assigned to protect us lying unconscious near the doorway. He had gotten to them first. My heart pounded in my chest, every instinct screaming to run, but there was nowhere to go. David raised his hand slightly, his voice steady despite the tension. "Dad, put the gun down. You don't have to do this." Robert's expression softened for only a second at the word Dad, but then hardened again. "You don't understand. That child," he said, pointing the gun at Lily, "is the reason everything is falling apart. She has something that could ruin me, and everyone connected to me." Lily whimpered, hiding her face against my shoulder. I tightened my grip around her. "She's just a child, Robert. You're willing to kill a 10-year-old to protect your secrets?" "She's not just a child," he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "She's proof of everything. Proof of my mistakes. Proof that will destroy everything I've built." David stepped closer, his hands still raised. "You built lies, Dad, and now they're catching up with you. You don't have to end it like this." Robert's hands trembled as he aimed the gun. I could see the conflict in his eyes, but also the darkness that had consumed him. He stepped closer, and I could smell the faint scent of alcohol on his breath. "You don't understand," he said again, almost to himself. "If that chip gets out, I'm finished. They'll kill me before the law ever does. I'm already a dead man." I took a slow step forward, keeping my voice calm. "Then let the law take you. Don't make this worse. Don't make David watch his father turn into a murderer." For a moment, he faltered. His grip on the gun loosened slightly. But then, headlights flashed through the window, police backup arriving. The sound of sirens filled the air. Robert's eyes widened with panic. "You called them!" he yelled, swinging the gun toward me. Before he could pull the trigger, Martha, who had been hiding behind the hallway door, leapt out and swung a lamp at his arm. The gun fired, the bullet shattering a picture frame inches from my head. The lamp hit hard, knocking the gun out of his hand. David lunged, tackling Robert to the ground. They struggled, fists flying, the sound of grunts and furniture crashing echoing through the house. I grabbed Lily and pulled her to safety behind the couch. She clung to me, sobbing. Within seconds, officers stormed in, weapons drawn. "Drop it!" they shouted as Robert tried to reach for the gun again. They subdued him, slamming him to the floor and cuffing his hands. Robert's eyes locked on mine as they dragged him up. There was no remorse, only fury. "This isn't over, Margaret," he spat. "You don't know the people you're dealing with. They'll come for you. They'll come for her." As they dragged him out, I collapsed onto the floor, shaking uncontrollably. David held me tightly, his own face pale. "It's over, Mum. He's gone." But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Robert was just a piece of something much bigger. The police secured the house and promised Robert would face charges for attempted murder, fraud, and countless other crimes. The chip was now in FBI hands, and they assured me it would bring down everyone involved in Robert's network. That night, as the house finally fell silent, Lily sat beside me on the couch. "Is he gone for good?" she asked softly. I stroked her hair. "He's gone for now, but we have to be careful." David joined us, his arm around my shoulders. "Mum, what happens next?" I looked at both of them, my heart heavy but resolute. "We protect Lily, we stay strong, and we face whatever comes." Just as I said the words, my phone buzzed on the table. I hesitated, then picked it up. The message was from another unknown number, different from the last. It read, "Robert is nothing compared to us. You have the chip. Hand it over, or we'll take the girl." My blood ran cold. The fight was far from over. And as I glanced at the window, I saw a figure standing across the street watching us. When our eyes met, he raised his hand slowly, as if in a warning, before vanishing into the night. I held Lily close, whispering to myself, "Whatever they want, they'll have to go through me first." The final battle was coming, and I knew it would shock everyone. The next morning, the safe house felt less like a shelter and more like a trap. Police officers patrolled the perimeter, but I could sense the tension in their movements. Everyone knew this wasn't just about Robert anymore. There were others out there, dangerous people who wanted that chip and the girl. I didn't sleep a wink. Lily sat quietly at the table, clutching her locket, while David paced the room, his jaw tight with frustration. "They know where we are, Mom," he said. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to strike again." He was right. The message from last night still burned in my mind. "Hand it over, or we'll take the girl." I stood, feeling a strength I hadn't felt in years. "We're not waiting. We're ending this. Today." David looked at me in shock. "Mum, you're 83. You can't—" I cut him off. "I've survived everything they've thrown at me. They think I'm weak because of my age, because I was blind. But I've seen more than they ever will. And now, I'm going to make them pay." We gave the FBI everything, copies of the chip, evidence from the cabin, every piece of information we had. But I kept the original chip hidden in a place no one would think to look, inside the handle of my cane. By afternoon, the agents set a trap. They announced a fake transfer of Lily to a different location, leaking it through a channel they knew the criminals monitored. The plan was to draw them out, catch them red-handed, and end the network once and for all. The convoy left at dusk. David drove one of the decoy vehicles with 2 agents, while I stayed in the lead car with Lily and Martha. The tension in the air was so thick I could barely breathe. Halfway through the route, headlights appeared behind us, then to the sides. Black SUVs surrounded the convoy. The attackers moved fast, blocking the road. Gunfire erupted. The agents fired back, but there were too many of them. The cars screeched to a halt. Doors slammed. Shadows rushed toward us. I pushed Lily down onto the floor of the car, shielding her with my body. "Stay down, sweetheart. Don't move." The attackers pulled the agents out, disarming them. One man yanked open my door, grabbing me roughly. I stumbled out, but I held onto my cane tightly. The leader stepped forward, a tall man in a dark suit, his face partially hidden by a mask. His voice was cold. "Where's the chip, Margaret?" I straightened my back despite my fear. "You'll never get it." He chuckled darkly. "You're brave for an old woman, but bravery won't save the girl." Lily whimpered inside the car. Rage burned through me. "You touch her and you'll regret it." The man raised his hand, signaling his men to grab her. As they reached into the car, I acted. I twisted the handle of my cane, revealing the hidden chip, and held it up high. "You want this?" I shouted. "Come and get it." They froze. The leader stepped closer, his hand outstretched. "Give it to me, and maybe we'll let you live." I took a deep breath. "You'll never get this chip, not while I'm alive." With all my strength, I smashed the cane against a rock, shattering the handle and the chip into pieces. The tiny fragments scattered across the ground. The leader roared in anger. "You fool! Do you know what you've done?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I ended your power." Before he could react, sirens blared. The FBI had been waiting. Dozens of agents swarmed the area, weapons raised. The attackers tried to fight, but they were outnumbered. One by one they were arrested, including the masked leader, who glared at me with pure hatred as they dragged him away. David ran to me, pulling me into his arms. "Mom, are you okay?" I nodded, though my legs were trembling. "It's over, David. It's finally over." Lily climbed out of the car, her eyes wide but filled with relief. She hugged me tightly. "You saved me," she whispered. I smiled through tears. "No, Lily, you saved yourself. You're stronger than you know." In the days that followed, Robert's entire network crumbled. The FBI pieced together enough evidence from the recovered fragments to convict dozens of people. Emily, still in prison, refused to testify, but was sentenced for attempted murder. Robert remained on the run for weeks but was finally caught hiding at a border town, broken and defeated. Lily was placed under protective custody, and eventually, with David's help, we began the process to adopt her legally. She was safe now, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. One evening, as the sun set over the porch, Lily sat beside me. "Do you think he'll come back?" she asked softly. I wrapped an arm around her. "No, sweetheart, he's gone. And even if he tries, we'll be ready." David joined us, smiling faintly. "You were amazing, Mom. You never gave up." I looked at them both, my heart full. They underestimated me because of my age, but this old woman still had a few fights left. As the first stars appeared in the sky, I whispered to myself, "We survived." But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a story of survival. It was proof that even in the darkest moments, courage can burn brighter than fear. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive.